Y'all, Gord here with Weedy Weekend 48 here. Uh, four away. Four away from a year. Isn't that fantastic? Hey, this is take number three. I'm hoping that this one works out better than the last bunch. Uh, I'm starting with a really shitty story. A guy here in Calgary, a disabled man in a wheelchair. People broke into his home. They stole his medicine. They stole his plants. They beat him up. They actually tied him down and beat him until he told where all his money and everything was. Threatened to cut off his fingers. It's a horrible story, but it needs to be shared first of all because this guy needs some help. This guy needs some help. And second of all, we need to. Uh, there are people like that out there. If you know of them, turn them in because I don't believe in being a rat, but people like that aren't human. You don't rat on humans. People that do that to a disabled person just to get some marijuana. Oh my god. Oh my god. So I'm not going to cheers to that. I'm not going to have a toke. I'm just going to move on to story number two so that we can get some uplifting stuff happening here because obviously these people were not real stoners. We don't hurt each other. I want to go on to the story to the next story. Sorry. I have pre-gamed a bit because this, as I say, this is take three. I keep trying to do this. So let's have a cheers to this story, which is how CBDs and the rest, people really like to tag onto CBD, can effectively treat bipolar disorders and other such disorders of the brain. Peace and cheers. That there was Girl Scout cookies mixed with Nukem. Quite a good wax made by MMJ Total Healthcare. They will always get a shout out in my Weedy Weekends because without their support, there's no way that Weedy Weekend would be coming to you. And without your support, all of you, Weedy Weekend wouldn't come to you. You know that. And I know you know that. This is a really good story. It talks about the two schools of thought when it comes to marijuana and its effect on the head. Uh, the old school, which is backed by studies, but I caution you, the old school says that marijuana causes psychosis, that marijuana changes the brain chemistry and thereby causes many of the disorders that people have out there. Now, most of us that are in the know are already laughing at that because we smoke it and we know we don't have a disorder, but we may have issues. I myself have. Um, my son looks at me. I I myself have depression. Maybe even a bit of a eating disorder. I don't know. Maybe that's caused by my depression. But I I know that it isn't the marijuana causing it, and the reason I'll say that, I'll get onto this story. This stories always take these tangents. That's why you watch me. Um, this weekend was a prime example. I have spent 8 months where I've been restricted, not allowed to medicate often. Whenever the visit of my child was even upcoming, 48 hours prior to his visit, I was not allowed to have a toke. While he visited, I was not allowed to eat, rub it on me, nothing. No ingestion. Even though no longer does my ex partner um, push those restrictions on me, I'm like Pavlov's dog. I feel such anxiety about being at all medicated around my son that I find myself pulling back and not medicating. And to the point that this weekend, it's not even my weekend with my son, but I've had him 4 weekends in a row. Why? Because now I'm allowed to medicate as long as I'm cool, and I always have been. But the anxiety just builds and builds to the point that I don't medicate. And then I feel worse and worse and worse. And then finally, I push myself and I take a little bit, it doesn't help. I take a lot and boom, I feel better. I can think straight. I've got weeks of, I have no idea where any money is coming from. That, of course, causes anxiety, but the worry is ridiculous. And the worry goes away, and I can think about and plan for how to handle day by day better when I'm medicated and more homeostasis. So it's helping my depression if I can get over this Pavlovic response to my son being around me. Because then when he isn't around me, I feel so guilty. I want him around me, you know. It's a tough thing, but it's a good story. It says right here, and I quote, a dysfunctional endocannabinoid system has been implicated in mood disorders such as bipolar disorder and modulation of the endocannabinoid system by exogenous cannabinoids such as cannabidiol, tetrahydrocannabidiol, and anandamide can potentially treat bipolar disorder symptoms by exerting antipsychotic, anticonvulsant, and anxiolytic effects. So it takes away anxiety, it takes away convulsions and psychosis when worked right. I have yet to figure it totally out, but science hasn't figured it totally out. What we need is to get marijuana off of Schedule 1 so that more of these kinds of studies that try to point to the positives of marijuana can be researched. Right now, because of it being Schedule 1, most of the time, if you want to study it, if you want to study the negative effects, you're likely to get funding. If you want to study possible positives of a Schedule 1 drug, you often are denied. So it's got to come off of there for more than one reason. Let's move on to the next story. And the next story is from T-Town Tim's home state of Washington. In fact, the flag on this story that I attach is right on Tacoma, Tim. And it's about your governor having vetoed a bill that was passed by your legislature to allow for the industrial growing and thereby sale and distribution of industrialized hemp. The story, though, is not that the governor vetoed it, it's that the legislature finally came back and overturned his veto. The governor was using his vetoes as a punishment for a budget not being released on time as he had told them to release on time. So they released the budget, then overturned his vetoes. So that means that then the two chambers of legislature have vetoed to overturn the governor's vetoes. This means that the bill to legalize the growth of industrial hemp has now officially been enacted into law. The passage of this bill is going to be extremely beneficial to their state as well as others who might be considering a similar move. Cool on you. Tim, are you going to grow some? Get back to me. And I'm going to cheers to that one. I have some of that very same wax in my pen. Again, Yokan pen. Really nice pen. The next story The next story, I've studied this one a lot. This is Philpott, our new health minister. She released this week that she will not be fighting the Allard case, will not be appealing the decision. And the Allard case was where the government was given 6 months to fix the MMPR program. They were very specific as to how to fix it, as to what to fix and what was wrong with it. And so the title that they aren't going to appeal it would seem to most of you as a positive. Oh, our Liberal government is living up to their promises to legalize. But this has nothing, this is not about recreational. And just because she isn't going to appeal it doesn't mean she's going to enact their recommendations. And I'm going to quote here. Because first I'll quote, she says, the government of Canada has decided on the matter of Allard versus Canada, we will not be appealing the court's decision. We will respect the decision of the federal courts. But then later she says the federal court's concern was that under the current legislation, medical marijuana was not appropriately affordable and accessible to Canadians. And those are the parts of the regulations we are required to address. Excuse me. So they're already narrowing it down to they just need to make it more affordable and more accessible. And this came from a question of, are you going to allow people to grow their own plants? And of course we should be able to. So should recreational people be able to grow their own plants. It's a plant. It's a plant. And a regulated commodity, well, okay, there should be regulations around the growing of it. People should know who's growing and how much you're growing, and it should be appropriate. And if you want to get into business or growing, there should be, okay, under our current society, there should be regulations for that business and all that kind of stuff like we have. I don't believe in any of that stuff because I'm an anarchist, but I live in this society, so I have to live with this society. So, that was a good one. Next, and I've gotten further. This is, as I said, this is take 3. I've gotten further this time. I'm now on to the next story, and this is a wonderful story. I really like this story because this is about how the war on drugs has made no difference to the number of users and actively harms public health, as reported by a major study. The 5-decade-long, 50 years international war on drugs started by the U.S. President Richard Nixon has harmed the public health and should be scrapped in favor of a process of decriminalization, a major new report has concluded. This is a great story. I'm going to lead you all to read it while I have a little toke of my Master Bubba. And as I say, I always put my stories below. This one is from The Independent in the UK. It's a good story. Worldwide, this thing needs decriminalized. How many lives have to be lost to the war on drugs? How many children have to die because they're being poorly treated with epileptic issues instead of being given CBD and having a full life? Before we finally put our foot down and say, we already know the government lied to us for the last 50 to 80 years of prohibition, 50 years of the war on drugs. And they've lied to us the entire time. In fact, the study that when Richard Nixon said we're starting the war on drugs because of a study that he had, the study recommended decriminalization. He said, no way, not going to do it, and hid the study. So we all know that our governments are lying to us, and yet we're not standing damn strong and saying, Enough already, Philpott. Just change the law. Quit skirting the issue. Do what the court said, and let's move on, and let's be a shining example to the rest of the world how decriminalization and having a government that stands for the rights of your people, not the rights of your corporations. That's what Canada used to always be. Let's see if we can get it back there. And the final story. Cheers. Yes, I'm emotional today. We've had weather like this, and my mood has been like this. But at least one thing has stayed relatively constant. My lack of money. Peace and cheers. Last story from the Stoner's Cookbook. It's an interesting one. I'm sending feelers out there because it's about a thing called 1 hour break, which is a tincture, a spray of Kava and a few other things: lemon balm, lobelia herbs, passion flower. But what it is a tincture to satisfy the anxiety that may even sit around after cannabis. It's to go with cannabis. I know a lot of people, and I'm one of them, that gets anxiety from some. Even some of you have said that you get it from indicas as well. Well, this is supposedly something that attacks that, and it speaks quite well in the story as to how Kava works. It also tells you how tinctures work, and, I've talked about that before. Putting it under your tongue is, you get almost what you get by eating, but you get quicker because it doesn't go through your liver. 1 hour break along with cannabis is simply the perfect all-natural combination. A no-brainer, in fact. Imagine experiencing a strong, uplifting, clear-headed buzz without any anxious side effects. You'll experience only the positive feelings of a supercharged buzz and none of the negative. So I'm curious. I'm really curious that you can click there to get your free bottle, a $29 value, and then they continually ship. 1 month supply. I'm tempted, but I'd like to find out if somebody who has anxiety has tried Kava, and does it work. I don't have money, so if I'm going to buy this, because I gotta get rid of this anxiety, it's driving me crazy, and this spring has been a tough one. So if you've tried Kava, let me know. If you've heard of somebody trying it, let me know. And if I try it, I will let you know. And that's the end of... so let's have some Super Kush Shatter. The very last of that, too. Yeah, the medicine is running out, my friends. I have a delivery coming, hopefully tomorrow. It's going to be a small one. Lots of different flavors, just small amounts. Because that's a agreement I've made to do some reviews. Cheers, Weedy Weekend. Now, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. You'll see me all week long with, I have at least 7 or 8 reviews I will be doing this week, as well as my normal token talks. I'll go for walks. We'll see what we can do. So, peace and cheers, love and harmony. Find people without smiles. Fix it. You have the smile in reserve. Fix it. Send them yours. Cheers.